There we go. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first meeting of the new year. I'm Patty Katz, the president of Reach Out America. Hope you all had sweet holidays and are all healthy. I'd like to first do a shout out. It's always wonderful when we have elected officials on our meeting, and I see that Town of North Hempstead Councilwoman Veronica Lurvey's here, so thank you for being with us, Veronica. And I'm just going to go over a few things. There's been a lot going on in the news, so here's a few highlights since we last met. Congress averted a catastrophic debt default after Democratic majorities in both chambers voted to send a $2.5 trillion increase to raise the debt ceiling to President Biden. The anniversary of January 6th, the insurrection just recently came and went. The Senate is still questioning people to get to the bottom of this event. And in our local elections, the last meeting, we were just getting ready to vote. So Steve Ryder was reelected as one of the commissioners of the Great Neck Water Pollution Control District, and Vanessa Tamari for the Park Commissioner. Nassau County legislator Maisie Phillip was sworn in at the Great Neck Chabad, which made many of us very upset since it was in a religious place. And our very own Great Neck resident, John Kamen, just threw his hat into the ring to run for Congress since Tom Suozzi gave up his seat to run for governor. Also, climate change, it's been horrible. So it's very prevalent, and scientists recently confirmed that for the past 6 years in a row, the ocean temperature has been going up, it's warming. So that's pretty horrible news. Also, Letitia James, bless her heart, subpoenaed Ivanka Trump and Don Jr. So fingers are crossed that some consequences will come to all of them. And also Devin Nunes resigned from Congress to run Trump's new media company. Also, after 13 after 13 successful seasons, Dr. Oz is quitting his TV show to run for US Senate in Pennsylvania as a Republican. And then we have some sad news. We lost a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Reverend Desmond Tutu, at age 90. Harry Reid, was Senate Majority Leader, died. And also Betty White, she died 17 days shy of her 100th birthday. And she was quite something. So that's the minor summary of what's going on around the United States. So I'd like to now take the opportunity to introduce Rita Hall. She led us brilliantly for 4 years as president of Reach Out America during the Trump era. Boy, she really had it, huh? So I'd like to just introduce her now so she can introduce our guests and we can get going for this evening's festivity. Thank you, Rita. You need to unmute, Rita. Rita, you need to unmute. You're muted. Okay, Rita.
These things frighten me. I met Lucian Truscott in 1974 when I was living in Israel. He was there as the Village Voice's war correspondent sent to cover the aftermath of the Yom Kippur War. Who knew the Village Voice had a war correspondent? But Lucian was ideally suited to the task. A direct descendant of Thomas Jefferson, who founded West Point, where generations of his family, including Lucian himself, attended, this Truscott was no ordinary cadet. He challenged authority his whole time there, among other things, fighting and succeeding in ending forced prayer at the academy, something that we hear, it's an issue we care about. But he also made seismic waves among his own kin when he took on his relatives, ultimately getting the descendants of Sally Hemings, Jefferson's slave mistress, to be included into the family fold and to be recognized as legitimate ancestors at regular commemorations. But though his background informs his writing, the reason Lucian is our guest today is because for about 50 years, he's been writing eloquently and provocatively about our country in publications like the New York Times, Salon, Slate, Rolling Stone, and The Voice. His best-selling novel set in West Point, Dress Gray, was made into a film. Now he pens a daily column via an increasingly popular platform, Substack. Many writers are using this now. You subscribe directly. I urge you to subscribe. Lucian was our guest speaker before the presidential election in 2016. Who knew? Needless to say, much has changed. We cannot be sure about the ground beneath our feet or the air that immediately surrounds us. But perhaps, as he does every day in his column, Lucian can give us some clarity that we can use to help us make sense of our confusing world. So Lucian, is he here?
Should be. Please join us.
He was here a second ago.
Okay, hold on. Let's see. Where'd he go? Okay. Hold on one moment, everyone. We're having a little technical difficulty over here. Okay. You should be with us in one moment. Thank you for waiting. Sure why. There he goes. Okay, he should be here right now. There he is. Okay. You need to put on your camera and unmute, please. Let's see, you having trouble there?
Okay, so and my camera,
Yes, please, so we can see who you are.
where is the cam? I don't see a
Camera
camera.
should be on, the camera should be on your lower left where it says video. It looks, it's to the left of the microphone. It's there's two little icons. One is the microphone and to the right of the microphone is the camera. You see it?
Okay. Okay. All right, how's that?
There you go. Hello.
Finally.
There you go. Thank you for joining us.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for that very kind introduction, Rita. I'm not sure that I live up to it, but I'll do my best. I've been writing a lot this, well, I've been writing a lot about Trump and a lot about politics. And, you know, I wrote a piece on the Supreme Court the other day. And anyway, the piece that, the thing that Rita suggested that I talk about today is this kind of what I sort of see as whining that's going on by Democrats. Every time you turn around, you see that you hear or you read something in an op-ed, or you read it on Facebook, or you know, you get a private message or you get an email that our democracy is fragile and that it's threatened. And I just think that and I hear it only from Democrats. I haven't heard a single Republican wringing their hands or clutching their pearls and saying, "Oh my goodness, our democracy is threatened." I mean, these guys are out there, you know, trying to passing voter suppression laws. And I mean, you know as well as I do what they're doing. But one thing that they're not doing is complaining how fragile our democracy is. You know, I think that we're playing into the hands of the Republican Party when we do that. It's you know, it makes me think back to other times in my life and maybe in yours when the same sort of talk went on. I mean, I remember, does anybody remember the 1972 election when Nixon won 49 of 50 states? The only state that he lost was Massachusetts. And I remember the Democratic Party was really defeatist after that. And, everybody was saying, oh my God, what's going to happen? And this and that. And then 2 years later, Nixon was driven out of office. 2 years after that, um, Jimmy Carter came along and beat Gerald Ford. And then Reagan came in, and then George Bush won, but only for one term. Then Bill Clinton came in, and then Bush Jr. got elected, and that everybody thought, oh my, things are coming to an end now because he got us involved in 2 wars. And then Barack Obama came along and beat him and beat Romney and served 2 whole terms. And then I think that what's causing this is that how flabbergasted we were when Trump won in 2016. We went through 4 years of scandals and impeachment and incompetence and cabinet secretaries that were stealing money and flying around on private jets. And, I hardly need to go through all this stuff. But it seems like, but then Biden came along and against odds, I think, beat him and beat him soundly. He won by 7 million votes. And I think that a lot of this is I think that if we look back at our own history, we can see that what's going on here is politics. It's Trump, and Trumpism really wasn't and isn't politics as usual, but it's politics, and it's Republican politics. But I don't think that the Republican Party really is doing anything new. They may be doing it at a new level and using new methods and this and that, but they're doing the same thing they've always done. They did it with voter suppression, before the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, and then all through the rest of the 60s and 70s and 80s. It was just a knockdown, drag-out fight in the South to keep voting rights for Black people and keep the Republicans from stealing elections and from blocking Black candidates out by changing the way they ran local elections from being district elections for, say, county boards of supervisors to at large, which would mean that you got to vote at large for different boards of supervisors in a county. And of course, the white people all got together and voted, 4 or 5 white people in. And then that had to be challenged, at the Justice Department and sometimes in federal court. So this kind of stuff has been going on forever. It's I think that the idea of Trump refusing to concede, and then especially inciting violence on January the 6th, is something new. And it's something that we, I'm sorry, it's something that we should worry about. But the thing that Republicans do in general, and they do it better than Democrats, is following party dictums, adhering to party discipline, staying on their bloody talking points. they've been doing this as long as I've been watching politics, and it's 50 years now. I think that the hold that Trump has on the Republican Party, the absolute hold he appears to have, is something new and it's real. And I think that it does indicate a kind of slide into authoritarianism among one of our political parties, which is just astounding. But I don't think that the reaction to this sort of thing should be to wring our hands and say, oh my goodness, our democracy is fragile. You know, the problem with democracy isn't that it's fragile, it's hard. It takes hard work, it takes organizing, it takes mobilizing, it takes getting out the vote. It takes meetings. It takes all of the hard work that politics is, and that's what I think Democrats have to keep in mind. That instead of talking about how fragile things are, we ought to talk about how strong we are. You know, our democracy will be strong as long as we've got its back. And by we, I mean Democrats. I don't think that the Republican Party has its back anymore. I think that they're willing to do anything to stay in power and engage in any kind of corruption. But of course, as I said, they've done that before. But we've fought them before, and we can fight them again. We can fight them now. I think that the strength in democracy, especially among Democrats, has to be that we're proud of our democracy. We're proud of the United States, and we're proud of the party that we belong to, and we're proud of the way that we fight the fight. We fight it fair. We fight it hard. We fight it every single day, but we fight it fair. And I don't think that it's time to start aping the Republican Party by fighting unfairly or dirty. I think I think we should just do what we've always done. I think that there's a chance, given the polling that's going on, but of course it's not accurate at this point in an election year. There's a chance that we could lose the House or come close to losing the Senate or lose the Senate. But you know what? We've lost the House before. We've lost the Senate before. We've lost the White House before. We've lost it multiple times in my life and in my adulthood. But every time that we've lost it, we bounced back and gone after it. And Republicans, every time that they get in power, they screw things up. And that pisses off the voters, and we can get those voters back. You know, I think we just ought to stay proud in our country and proud of our party, and stay determined that nobody is going to take this away from us.
We've got some questions. Specific ones, other ones, people are supporting what you're saying. One can hear me, right, Patty? Yes?
Yeah, we can hear you. Wendy.
Okay. So we got some questions. What do you think, let's see. What are the chances that the criminal investigation by the district attorney general could actually find Trump guilty of inciting insurrection? And how likely is it that the January 6th committee will be able to acquire the White House tapes? So this is
I think the January 6th committee is doing an excellent job. And I think, I don't know this as a fact, but Bob Woodward seemed to indicate it fairly strongly the other night when he was on MSNBC on The Last Word, talking about all this stuff. that the January 6th committee isn't waiting to do a criminal referral to the Justice Department. I think the January 6th committee is sharing information with the Justice Department right now. There isn't any law that says they can't do that. They're a congressional committee. They can do with their interviews with witnesses or documents that they get, anything they want to do. As we know, they've leaked some of the text messages and so forth that were sent back and forth from the White House to various congressmen and all of that. And I think that obviously, if they're putting that kind of stuff in the press and releasing letters and so forth, I'm sure they're sharing this stuff with the Department of Justice. I don't think that there's any chance at all of Trump being indicted for inciting a riot. I think that that's water under the bridge. They didn't get him in an impeachment for that, and that's because the Republicans all voted against against finding him guilty. But I think that that's a much weaker case than the other stuff that they're working on, and that basically is we've heard Lynn Cheney refer over and over again to a law in the U.S. Code that makes it a felony to interfere with government operations, and trying to get a mob to stop the counting of the ballots on January 6th is clearly interfering with government operations. I think they've indicted and they've convicted a bunch of people that were in the mob on that charge, and they've got 17 of them or something like that coming up for trial on the charge of interfering with government operations. Whether or not they're going to indict Trump for it, I don't know. If I were to guess, I think it's a very hard call, because as you probably know, prosecutors, no matter where they are, down in counties or in cities or federal U.S. attorneys, don't like to bring cases unless they figure they can win. And I just think, I don't know whether or not they figure they can win a case against Donald Trump. I don't know if they think they could get 12 jurors to sit on a jury that would find him guilty. So I really, none of us know what's going to come out of the Justice Department's investigations, but I think that we've got a better idea of what's going to come out of the House committee. And I think what's going to come out of the House committee once they start holding hearings is going to remind us a lot of the Watergate hearings by the Select Committee back in 1973. I don't know whether you remember that, but they put witness after witness after witness on the stand. And a lot of those witnesses sat right there and told the truth. And according to what has been leaked from the committee, they've got people out of Pence's office. They've got multiple people that have served on the White House staff that have gone in and given hours of testimony to them in private before their investigators and before some of the congressmen. So they're getting, I think that the whispers and so forth that we get out of this stuff is leading me to believe that they're really getting some good, strong information on what went on in the White House, what went on in the so-called war room at the Willard Hotel, what went on in the planning for January 6th before it happened, and then what went on during the invasion of the Capitol. There are people in the White House that know what Trump did and what he said. We've already seen leaks from the committee from people in the White House saying they saw him sitting in the private dining room watching watching the whole thing on TV for 3 hours. So we know we're going to get testimony about that sort of thing. And Liz Cheney has already identified sitting there and twiddling your thumbs for 3 hours as dereliction of duty. It's on its face, its failure to uphold the oath that every president takes to ensure that the laws are faithfully executed. Trump didn't do that. So I think we're going to get a lot of testimony about that. Now, whether or not when the committee holds these hearings, that any of this testimony, any of the documents that they produce and so forth, are going to make any kind of dent in the support that Trump has is another matter.
Okay, I have some questions about the Supreme Court. You've written about that. You wrote about the Supreme Court, backing up the Texas decision. So we have some questions about the Supreme Court. Why do you think Congress hasn't exercised its check power on the Supreme Court, modifying the impact of the court decision? Why do you think Democrats haven't added more members to the court? What changes to the court would you like to see? Should we expand the court? And what do you think about that?
Well, I think you get your answer every single time you look at a head count for what's going on in the United States Senate. They've got 50 senators and they need all 50 of them to do anything. And they can't get two of the Democratic senators, and you know who they are as well as I do, as well as a couple of others that don't really pop off a lot about it, even to agree on changing the filibuster rule, suspending the rule for a one-time only thing on a voting rights bill. I don't think they could get 50 votes. They could probably get it passed in the House, but I don't think they could get 50 votes in the Senate to expand the Supreme Court. And I'm not sure that that's what should be done. And as far as reining in the Supreme Court or doing things about what the Supreme Court decisions are, they're trying to do it right now with these voting rights bills. One of the voting rights bills would basically overturn Shelby versus Holder and return some of the powers of Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act to the Department of Justice. But as we see, they're having a hell of a time getting that passed. The Republicans are not going to vote for anything that threatens their power in the least. I mean, they've come right out and said it. Everything that they do indicates that. They don't want to get primaried by people in their party. They want to stay in power. But what I have to tell you, though, is all of these things what I have to remind you is all of these things that I'm saying, and all these things that we're talking about have happened before. This is politics. This is politics, the hardball politics, the way hardball politics has been played. And we may not get to overturn some of these decisions that the Supreme Court makes right away. But if they, for example, rule against and overturn Roe v. Wade, then I think it's pretty obvious what's going to happen. There's going to be a state by state fight to permit abortions, whether or not to permit abortions in states. That's what's going to happen. And then it becomes the job of the Democratic Party to get in there and slug it out in those states. And, I can't think of anything worse, frankly, than getting down at the county and state level and slugging it out in those legislatures. I've spent some time around state legislatures in my day. And they're the most, so most of them are the most stultifying, boring places you've ever been in your entire life. But we've got to elect people that are willing to put up with stultifying and boring, get them in there so that they'll vote the way we want them to vote and overturn some of this stuff.
It's very germane to our local area, which I might ask you about. I just want to ask you about the filibuster. Do you think Democrats should abolish the filibuster?
I'm sorry, before you answer that question, can I just ask attendees, if you want to ask questions, please go into the Q&A and type in your question, okay? And then Rita will look at it and read it out, all right? Thanks so much. Sorry to interrupt.
Now, what was it? What did you ask, Rita?
About the filibuster, if you think Democrats should abolish the filibuster.
Well, I think that the filibuster ought to be done away with, and done away with right now, because I can guarantee you that if the Republicans take back the Senate and Mitch McConnell is the majority leader, that's the first thing they're going to do. They're going to abolish the filibuster because they're going to want to pass bills. And they won't get them passed if the Democrats are there filibustering anything they want to do. And especially, that's especially true if they were to, with any candidate, Trump or anybody else, win the White House in 2024. Then they would have, you know, if they took the Senate, then they would have the Senate and a White House with somebody in it that would sign their bills. And they would not want Democrats filibustering what they want to do. So I think that we're fools if we don't stomp on that filibuster and do away with it.
We have a question from a friend of the organization who was also an assemblywoman up in New York State, and Michelle Schimmel, and she's asking, politics is an echo chamber, and it's been said if Fox was around during Nixon's time, he wouldn't have had to resign. Hasn't the 24/7 news cycle changed things, and social media hasn't it changed? You know, hasn't it made things different?
I guess, you know, I mean, you read that every single day about the 24-hour news cycle. Well, you read about the 24-hour news cycle when CNN started. You know, I mean, this is nothing new. CNN, I can't remember what year CNN started broadcasting and covering things basically 24 hours a day. But it was quite a while now. So that's nothing new. I think social media has changed because it makes it easier for people to contact each other, and it makes it easier for devious people, and there are plenty of them in both parties, but mainly in the Republican Party, like Karl Rove and people like that, and Trump, of course, to use social media to build support and influence people. But you know, social media, as far as political parties go, is a two-way street. I mean, we can do social media. The Democrats, starting with Obama, were excellent at raising money on social media and raising support on social media. I mean, that's the way Obama got elected twice. And the Biden campaign did a good job of that as well. So social media is just another battleground where if the Republicans, you know, do something, we have to counter it. And I don't think that we ought to be trying to depend on or counting on the social media companies like Twitter and Facebook and the rest of them to save us on this. They're not going to save us. Those are businesses. They want to make money. And I think in large measure, Zuckerberg and the rest of them don't really give a damn how they make their money. They just want to make it. And so we're going to have to save ourselves by using social media better than the opposition does, and fighting harder and caring more.
So I want to go a little to international stuff. Uh, uh, do you support a military pushback against Putin's aggression in Ukraine? And also, I'd like you to talk a little bit about our pulling out of, because when we met, we talked about this, about pulling out of Afghanistan and how that was done and so on, and the criticism that ensued.
Well, I'll take on the Afghanistan thing first. I think that the criticism that came out of the pullout from Afghanistan was going to happen to whoever did it. It didn't matter. You could have Jesus himself or God pulling us out of Afghanistan. And number one, it would have been a mess. And number two, they would have gotten criticized for it. I think that that Biden knew going into it that there was no good way to do it. The best that they could do was get as many people out of there as they could with as small a loss of life as they could. And that's exactly what they did. A lot of the criticism about it was uninformed and stupid, in my opinion. And I think that that if you look back on it, I don't care really how we got out of there, but the fact that we're out of there is what's important. I mean, we were in there for more than 20 years, wasting money, throwing money around, throwing money at the Afghan government, giving them weapons, giving them this, giving them that. And it was just down a rat hole. And we should have gotten out years ago. But the fact that we had to wait till Joe Biden to get out is just another instance of Republicans saying, oh, well, we're going to do this, and then they don't do it. And then they make a big mess, and then Democrats have to come along and clean it up. Or Democrats have to be willing to do the heavy lifting and the hard stuff. And, that, as I said before, that's happened before too. So a lot of this, I mean, I know I keep harping on this, but I want to emphasize as much as I can that so much of what's going on right now reminds me of stuff that's gone on before. And I want to harp again on that ought to give you some hope. We went through Watergate. We went through 4 years of George Bush Jr. fumbling around like an idiot in a tank or something and screwing everything up. And then we got out of it. We came out of it. And we, and then we passed Obamacare. I mean, we've done amazing, wonderful things. And the more that we keep in mind the wonderful things that we've done, the more that I think we can do more in the future.
Anything on Putin? Somebody asked about Putin.
Oh, as far as Russia, the Russian thing goes, no, I don't think the Americans or NATO should touch a single bullet or trigger in Ukraine. I think the last thing in the world we want, especially under a Biden administration or any Democratic administration, is getting involved in a land war in Eastern Europe. I mean, we know what happened in the last land war that was fought over there, killed, 30 or 40 million people. In addition to the people that perished in the Holocaust, tens of millions of civilians and soldiers were killed in a land war in Eastern Europe and Russia and Europe. And I think that's, Putin has the upper hand here. There isn't any doubt about it. Number one, it's a country that's on the border with his country. And look at what we've done in Central America and South America for decades. You know, we also went through the Cuban Missile Crisis because we were telling Russia, you're not going to put troops and you're not going to put missiles on an island right off of our coast. I mean, you know, this is tit for tat. And I think that Putin has announced what he wants to do. He wants to kind of restart the Soviet Union. I don't think that there's a lot that we can do to stop him. We can pass, you know, sanctions and make everything very difficult for him and really affect, you know, the lives of the Russian leadership. But that's about all we can do. I think in a funny way, you know, we're really dependent on a lot of Russian women right now, because these Russian wives of these Russian oligarchs and these Russian politicians are used to getting in a jet and going to Paris and shopping at Gucci and all that stuff. And if we can make all of that either impossible or more difficult, you know, those politicians and those oligarchs in Russia are going to hear about it over the proverbial dinner table. I guarantee you. Russians have gotten used to living in the big wide world and used to having food and Western gear and clothing and everything else on the shelves of their stores. You know, there's only so much that Putin is going to be able to do, because we can diminish the extent to which Russia and Russians are going to be able to live in the big wide world. I mean, I've always thought one of the things that we could do, basically with a signature on a piece of paper, is stop landing rights for Russian aircraft in the United States and Europe, where Aeroflot planes could take off, but they wouldn't have a place to land that anybody would want to go. I mean, you know where those people want to go. They want to go to France. They want to go to Spain. They want to go to the United States. They want to go to Norway. They want to go skiing. You know, they want to shop. They want to walk down. They want to go to the Trevi Fountain. You know, and I think that we could really put a dent in Putin's ambitions and his ability to carry them out by severely limiting the ability of Russians to travel.
I have something local that really mirrors what's happening in the rest of the country. Just a tiny bit of background at our local level in Great Neck, which, you know, is of interest to a lot of the people who are watching. We were a very solid liberal progressive area that has become religious and right-wing, largely very Trumpian. And what's happened is that it's affected our very, very local elections. I mean, things like the parks department or the library election, these have become contentious, and they've become kind of embroiled in the larger sort of Nassau County Republican and Republican mostly, but we never used to know, for example, what party the parks commissioner was from, because that person was just either competent or not, and we voted for them and they did their job. And the same in the library. Now there's a situation where locally, I'm sorry I'm going on because this is really your forum, but I'm trying to explain it. Like, for example, in the public school, there are elections having to do with the board, and there's an argument about a critical race theory, you know, being taught at the kindergarten level, which is preposterous. But because it's beginning to be taken over by a religious right-wing bunch of people, and because they're very, you know, they're very focused and they're very organized. And this is happening in the library election. And this has also affected our county. I mean, this is why our county, Nassau County, we had what we thought was a really terrific Nassau County executive, Laura Curran, who had support from both parties, actually, because she was very effective. But there was this strong organizing force that helped to defeat her. And on a sort of more local level, that this has happened locally. All the Democrats in the last election at the local level lost. Now, there are a lot of reasons why. Maybe we didn't get the vote. I don't know. I'm sure that's true too. But you've written about this kind of stuff, that phrase politics is local, which I thought, well, that's not true, but actually it turns out that it is true. So I don't know if you have any advice or any ideas about what folks like us, an aging population, aging Democrats, being given over to a more right-wing crowd. I don't know that they're in the majority, but they're certainly getting out there and affecting elections. And someone referred to the fact that one of the people, the local legislator that just won against a Democrat that had been in office for years, and she was effective and she was good and she was popular. And this sort of right-wing unknown person without any kind of experience won, and she was sworn in at a synagogue. I mean, it's not illegal. We all, search the law books. It's not illegal, but it's certainly not right. And we're sort of tearing our hair out about what are we going to do about this? And I don't know if you have, if you have something to say.
I can understand what you're saying. I mean, we read about it every day about these school board elections in Ohio and Indiana and they're everywhere. They're everywhere. And I think, the answer is organize, mobilize, and vote. That's what the answer is. It's hard to do. Politics is hard. Democracy is hard. And these people are obviously playing for keeps. But I think that one thing that to keep in mind is you're talking about that one person that got beat, who was very competent and did a great job for years and years and years, and got beat by some idiot. Don't forget, these idiots have to actually do things. And when they don't do the things that people want, like take care of the roads or educate children properly or whatever, people are going to react. You can't look at the Republican Party and what they want to do with power like it's some sort of unchallengeable monolith. It's not. They're bad at governing. They're bad at governing on the national level. We know in from years past in both Suffolk and Nassau County, Republicans have been terrible at governing in these counties. And because of that, they've gotten beat now and again. So, don't get so depressed by what you see right now, because Republicans have suddenly risen up and started to run all these stealth candidates that this is going to be going on forever. I don't think it is. It's democracy is hard. Governing is even harder. And these people don't know how to govern and don't really want to govern. And that's going to damage them. That's going to hurt them. So don't get too depressed. And then when the next election comes along, find a candidate, get out there and run them and try to appeal to younger people.
Okay, just one more. And this is just, another thing where we wring our hands. Democrats, progressives, liberals are responsible for so much of the good legislation that we all enjoy, but why are we always not given credit for it? What's wrong with our messaging, or what's wrong with people's perception of what it is that we do for them?
Well, I think we ought to take a page out of Trump's handbook and start bragging. Trump was an insufferable braggart, but look at where it got him. It got him the presidency, for crying out loud. And I think that we need to do more bragging. I think that the way to counter, for example, all of that bloody criticism on how we got out of Afghanistan is to brag a bit about how we got out of Afghanistan. Turn it around. You know, talk about how many tens of thousands of people we got out of there, and what's going on with those people right now. They're out of there. We're still getting people out of there. Talk about how many people that are not getting killed every month or every year over there, Americans and so forth. I think we need to do more bragging about the good things that we've done, and more reminding of people of why they like us. I mean, for crying out loud, Medicare. You know, we ought to brag about Medicare every single time a politician gets in front of a microphone. They ought to use the word Medicare in the first sentence, and use Medicaid in the second sentence, use Social Security in the third sentence, and use Obamacare in the fourth sentence. Those are all Democratic programs. They were passed by Democrats, but they benefit everybody. And everybody obviously needs to be reminded of you know, what benefits they're getting out of it. I mean, think of what this pandemic would be if we didn't have Medicare, Medicaid, and Obamacare. Just think of it. It's, you know, we've got 840,000 Americans have died. It would be 4 million if we didn't have those healthcare programs in this country. And it's, you know, I think we need to say this stuff. We need to brag. We need to tell people and remind people, you know, what we've done in the past and what we'll do in the future. You know, we'll improve Medicare. I think that the Democrats should talk about that child tax credit every time they get in front of a microphone. Every single time. Everybody benefited from that. Everybody. Things that everybody benefits from, people like it, and they need to be told and reminded every single time that a Democrat gets in front of a microphone who did it for them.
Well, thank you. Thank you very, very much for your time and your insights and everything else. And you know.
Well, I love talking to your group, and I'll be glad to come back and do it anytime.
Sure, maybe one day in person. Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
That would be great.
Thank you so much.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lucian.
I'll wear a mask, but I think you'll still be able to recognize me.
By your voice. By your voice. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much. That was very positive, very inspiring. And thank you, Rita Hall, for moderating. Really appreciate it. So everyone, thank you for coming tonight. Please join us next month. February 9th, we're going to have TJ Hatter. He's the Long Island Director of the Intergovernmental Affairs for New York State Attorney General Tish James. He's going to be giving us important insights on scamming and how to avoid being duped. This is so important. All those phone calls we get, all those emails, he's going to give us lots of tools how to recognize what's real and what isn't. So don't miss this important event. Also on January 26th at 6:30, there's going to be a Zoom workshop on climate stories through the town of North Hempstead's Climate Smart Communities, which both Harriet Becker and I are on that group. And I'll be sharing my climate story. So please join us, okay? And thank you so much again. Thank you, Rita and Lucian Truscott, for a great evening. And everyone, please be healthy, stay well. We'll see you next month. Thank you. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.